Hello, welcome to Fireside with Peter Adkison on Gen Con TV. On this show, we go in search of the untold stories behind your favorite games. And in today's episode, we continue our delve into the history of Dungeons and Dragons with Jennifer Clarke Wilkes. Now, Jennifer is a game editor and who has been working on role-playing games, card games, board games since 1995, including 4 editions of Dungeons and Dragons. That's right, 4 editions of Dungeons and Dragons. I think I'm just going to stop right there because that's amazing. Jennifer, thank you for being with us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I just got to comment on this 4 editions thing because, I've played every edition of Dungeons and Dragons and DM'd most of them. I tend to focus on the odd numbered editions, but the only one I worked on was 3rd edition. I came in just at the right time, worked on the best edition ever, and then didn't really see any reason to continue on after that.
I see. I came in just after, not long after Wizards acquired TSR, and I went, ooh, Dungeons and Dragons. And moved over to D&D editing. It was just at the end of 2nd edition, so I did do some 2E stuff, and then of course we worked on the 3rd edition stuff for quite a while. Yeah, that was exciting.
Great. That's cool. Well, that's quite a resume to be able to say you worked on 4 editions of D&D. I think I've had maybe 2 or 3 other guests like Skip Williams and Steve Winter. You could say that. Let's go back to before that. We want to start by getting to know Jennifer before Dungeons and Dragons and all that. Like where are you from? Where were you raised? Where did you go to school?
Well, I'm from a town called Aylmer, Quebec, which is across the river from Ottawa, capital of Canada. And I lived in Ottawa for quite a long time, worked in the government because, it's the capital. And I eventually wound up in jobs where I was writing a lot. And from there, I went into editing. And where I went into editing was the Department of Justice, which is, so I'm working on laws. I'm working on regulations.
Okay,
and I'm working on these stickly little rules, basically. And I said, this is just like game rules. So I'm going to try. And I did. I actually wrote to White Wolf and said, hey, got any editing work for me? And they sent me a test, and I wound up doing some White Wolf stuff. I did a vampire adventure.
But I'm gonna back up a little bit. So did you go to school for this? Did you
no, my
did you get like a degree in English literature or something?
my master's is in classical literature, Latin and Greek. So I guess I could kind of, because I knew that the Latin in Ars Magica was not always good, for instance. So when I had a chance to work on that.
No, where did you do your academic studies?
Oh, I studied my Bachelor of Arts was at a university in Ottawa called Carleton, and then I took my master's degree at McMaster University, which is in Hamilton, Ontario. And that's as far as I got, just a master's degree.
Oh, just a master's degree. Well,
just a master's.
Just a master's degree. I that's all I got to. I had to go back to school for my master's degree, but I'm proud of it. I mean, from where I was raised, getting a master's degree, my parents were just happy I finished high school, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I worked my way through school a fair bit. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship for my graduate study, my graduate studies. So that was good. And from there, well, eventually, like I said, fell into a job at in the civil service. I've been taking their test, and they said, "Wow, you can write real good." So they got me into. I was doing correspondence work for the tax department for a long time.
Right.
Well, yeah.
And you said, and you did editing of legal documents, or was that?
Yeah. Like the government of Canada would publish regulations. Most of the regulations I was dealing with were transportation related, like airports and things. And it's just fiddly little stuff to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, because this is law, right? And so edit that stuff. Then it gets published in the Gazette or whatever, the official documents of the government. There's no no pressure there.
Okay, so now I think I'm caught up with you in terms of getting into the White Wolf. So you wrote to White Wolf. About what year is this? I always like to put things in context of gaming history, like pre-Vampire.
This would have been, I think, 1990. 4, I think so. I think that's right.
Vampire's been out for a couple
Been
of
out for a while.
years. World of
Um,
Darkness has got a full head of steam.
Yep. I also did a little. And I also edited an adventure for Street Fighter, so which was actually kind of fun. They didn't have the Street Fighter license. Yeah. And
So
I worked on
Street
it.
Fighter, you mean like the role playing game?
Street Fighter, the role playing game. Yes.
Was that a
That was
White
White Wolf. Yeah.
I
White Wolf had Street Fighter. Yeah.
I'd conveniently forgotten that.
Kind of fun. It was very different. Anyway, I've been doing that for a while and said, let's go for the big time. And I basically cold called WotC, and not cold call, but again, I wrote a letter just cold to somebody I thought was an editor in chief there. As it turns out, I wrote to Lisa Stevens. I said, hey,
Well,
can I edit for you?
It wouldn't have been the first time that Lisa might have misled someone under what her responsibilities and authority were.
I think I must have found her as editor in chief of Dragon or some such thing. So, or done. No, we didn't have it then.
She was trying to get every title possible.
Yeah.
I love Lisa.
She was all. Yeah.
She
so
conquered many mountains by just claiming them.
Her letter did eventually get routed to the correct department, and it sounded like they were interested in me, but that was just when the lead editor there, got into a traffic accident, and so she was out of contact for a while. But eventually, out of the blue, I got a response again from Wizards, and we did some interviews and things. Came out to Seattle.
And that lead editor, of course, was Beverly Marshall Sailing.
That's right.
A big name in my book. You know, Beverly is
yes.
Well, she so we did when I first started doing these episodes, Jennifer. I don't know if you had a chance to go all the way back to the beginning, but I was nervous about doing them on my own, so I called up Beverly. I said, "Hey, Beverly, you want to hold my hand through the first few episodes of this, and we'll talk about Magic the Gathering." And you know, she like many times in my life, she's was some adult supervision was required. So yeah, so our loyal.
Uh-oh. Shh.
Visitors of the show know who Beverly is. Oh no! Wait. Okay. We both back. Hi.
Huh.
Me or Jennifer? All right. Okay. Good. Well, you know, everybody watching, they realize everybody in the world right now knows this Zoom is you know, all these online tools are not 100%.
Well, as long as nobody Zoom bombs us, I'll be okay, you know.
Okay, so you sent in a letter expressing your interest, and Beverly Marshall Sailing, Beverly responded. What did you say?
I got a thank you for your interest and an editing test, which I did. And I filled out the editing test, and then I heard nothing for months. I thought, oh, well, I guess, you know, I bombed out somehow because I didn't know that Beverly was on her back, you know, in the hospital bed at the time. But then they got back in touch with me early in 95, February, March, somewhere in there. And we did some phone interviews. And then off into Seattle, and I interviewed there. At first, I was looking at interviewing, possibly working on the Netrunner game. That's what I first got out there for.
Right.
That didn't really happen. Netrunner took a different editor. So then I was hired on ultimately to work on Ars Magica, which was at Wizards at the time. So I finally got a chance to fix some of the Latin there. But yeah. Of course, you know, Ars Magica eventually was moved off to a different company, and so then from then on, I was working on mostly Magic, but pretty well all kinds of things that came along.
Right. So the you mentioned the editing test. I think Beverly's editing test is now legendary in the industry. You're at least fifth or sixth person that's come on that's mentioned the editing. And I remember the editing test, and I also remembered where she got the editing test, which was from an author who I think she'd be upset if I mentioned his name.
It's a very thorough test.
Yeah. Fix this author's, edit this author.
I have an editing test.
But you were living, you moved out to Seattle for this job, right?
That's right. I was living in Ottawa, and then I moved up to Seattle. I'd have to tell you, pretty well the minute I hit the ground in Seattle, I said, yeah, going to stay here if I can. Really, Seattle didn't take long for Seattle to feel like home to me. I still love living out in the west coast of Canada. It's not quite the same as Seattle, but it's good here. I like it.
It's nice because you're in BC now, right?
Yes, I'm in BC, a little town called Hope, BC. It's a couple of hours east of Vancouver, but it has the attraction, I guess, of being a major junction of all three big highways here. So we get a lot of tourist traffic through town. So it's like a tiny town with like a dozen motels, a dozen restaurants. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so you got to work on Ars Magna, which is a great game. By the way, we've had Jonathan Tweed, of course, on the show, and and then it moved on to. So what year did you start? You must have started in.
I started in May '95 is when I started, just at the end of May.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Magic by this point is doing really well. We were recovering from Fallen Empires. We're 2 years in.
Yeah. Things were still kind of tough at Wizards at that time, as I recall. The end of '95 was rough. But then I was able to stay on, and I worked with Magic a lot after that. There was also BattleTech, the BattleTech card game. I was working on that as well. And various other projects, whatever came along. But then Wizards bought out TSR in, what was that, 97? Was it 98? Yeah.
97.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I, said, hey, you need an editor for D&D? How do you think? I got an editing test because that's what they do, right? This was Chris Perkins' editing test. So actually, no, it wasn't an editing test. They told me, okay, here's an alternative adventure. Edit this for us. Oh, okay. It's like alternative. First, I have to learn this system, right? And then I can edit their adventure. So that was a challenge, But I guess they liked it.
So I didn't know this. So you had to take a second editing test to move from Magic into working on D&D.
Well, sort of. Like I said, I had to do this alternative adventure, and I guess that was sort of a way of evaluating me as a role-playing editor.
Oh, it's because you're going from card games to...
Yeah, it's very different stuff.
Right.
Anyway, I guess they liked it all right because they hired me on for D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you got to work on, you came into that early enough that you got a chance to work on something second edition.
Yeah, a second edition adventure or two. Something that Chris Primus wrote, as I recall.
Oh.
And there was they were still publishing some second edition stuff, but work had already begun on third edition at that time. So it's kind of weird working on second edition stat blocks while I'm trying to switch gears and go to third edition, which is completely different. And then back to the second edition thing. It's a strange time. I didn't do very much on second edition, but I had to learn the system. I learned it well enough. I knew the system, but learning all the fiddly bits like stat blocks and how you word things,
Now, did you when you were working on that? I've talked to a couple of TSR editors, and I say that in quotes not to disparage the editors as editors, but in TSR culture, editors were more than editors. They also did a lot of project management. Did you get roped into that aspect?
No, I'm terrible at project management. Terrible at it. Just give me a job to do, and I'll do it. I can manage my own work. That's fine.
Right.
The only time when I did something like that was, oh gosh, somewhere in the 2000s, maybe 2008. For a time, we basically told Kim Mohan he had to take a vacation. He said, go take a vacation, and I will take over, and I will cover your duties while you're gone. And so I was acting as the managing editor or whatever for D&D at that, just basically getting the current book that was being worked on, shuffling it through production and all. It's about as close as I've come to that kind of thing.
Right. Right. So But you were fans of D&D from way before then, right?
Oh, I was playing from the white box.
From the white box.
From the white box, not the brown box. That's not true. I did see some brown boxes, but the first one I bought was the white box. And we played D&D back in college. I discovered the D&D club quite by accident, but that was the beginning of many, many friendships. I'd been pretty lonely and geeky before then, and the game club, well, changed my life. And we played a lot of D&D, a lot. And of course, in those days, there was a book. It had some things in it, but there wasn't really a game there. So everybody's D&D game was quite different.
Yeah.
And some people made it very, very, made it their own game. It was really nothing like the rules at all by the time they were done with it. And they've been playing ever since.
Right. So you were playing then by the early 80s, maybe late 70s.
Late 70s. Yeah, I'm that old.
Yeah. Well, that's when I got into it too. So
yeah.
So okay, so you played so you must have, like me, grown up familiar with a lot of these names. And
well, I was grown up by then, but yeah, a lot of these names, sure, the names of authors and even editors and designers, yeah.
So what was it like to meet them finally? I mean, for me, I maybe this is a weird question, but for me, like it was so amazing to go and meet people whose names I knew. You know, of course, Garrett Gygax and Dave Arneson, but Skip Williams and Roger Moore and Kim Mohan.
Yeah. Let me see. I'll have to say, when I first got to WotC, I was pretty starry-eyed by meeting. I got to meet Jonathan Tweet. Oh, I knew this guy from a lot of things before that. Wow, Jonathan Tweet. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, and Richard Garfield, of course. The TSR people, I knew some of their names. Like I had heard certainly of Skip, and some of the others, but didn't know them well enough. Wasn't so starry-eyed about them.
You weren't impressed, huh? Weren't impressed.
I got I was assigned to show people around. We all had to, so I got assigned a partner to get them familiar with wizards and what's around town and stuff. And mine was I don't remember his name right now. He had been the editor of Dragon anyway. So I just got down to work with them basically.
What was but you were working closely with Kim Mohan then? You mentioned him.
Yeah, he was the managing editor or whatever. Is that what he called himself? Anyway, he was the guy in charge of everything. So he was managing the projects and setting the style for D&D and all the rest of it, and generally getting things perfect for publication. So after we'd gone through all the writing and the editing, he'd give it another look, give it a little polished, maybe work with the production team, get it all pretty. So I worked with him a lot. Worked with him pretty well the whole time until I left D&D, which was just at the end of 2012.
Okay, well, we're not going to jump that far just yet.
Oh yeah.
So you first worked on a D&D adventure that Chris Pramas works and wrote, and but then you moved into third edition.
Yeah.
And what was the first thing you worked on with third edition? Do you remember?
Mostly, I believe I worked on the monster manual, and it's kind of been typecast since then because I keep doing monster manuals, but I like them. The monster manual.
That reminds me. I gotta ask. You know what I'm gonna ask?
What?
Well, you tend to channel the goblin spirit.
Yeah.
A lot. What's you and the goblin thing?
I don't know. I just felt an affinity for the goblins, especially the magic goblins. The silly little goblins in magic. I just found them appealing in some way. So I'm the goblin editor. I have been for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So I just had to ask. Yeah, it's.
I didn't have any influence on D&D goblins, unfortunately. They were just pretty well stayed as much as they had been.
Yeah. Well, Richard did tap into something kind of, sort of a meme or an idiom. I'm not quite sure about the goblins that showed up in Magic Scatter. So certainly nasty and vicious, but ambitious and
Ambitious, yeah. It just with goblins, it just takes a lot of them to get something done, right?
yeah,
There's always more goblins.
yeah.
So
Always willing to attempt something just beyond their
yeah,
skill set.
that's right. Say, oh, that didn't work. Let's throw a few more at it. Yeah.
So when so you worked on the third edition Monster Manual, which Skip Williams I think was the lead writer for
Skip
that.
Williams was the lead on that.
So you got to work with
and that was fun. I do remember making a substantial change to how big cats attack, which I'm pretty proud of. As we did a play test.
Did you come up with the pounce rule?
Pretty well. I didn't come up with it, but basically we were play testing a fight with a lion. I said, okay, well, we had the lion claw bite. It just didn't feel like a cat, I said. So I said, look, it just feels like it would be more cat-like if they did a jump type of thing before and landed on you and started clawing at you first.
Right.
And so Skip designed up the pounce mechanism in response to that. And that works much better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So inspiration
like
behind the pounce attack and
pounce is great. Yeah. That's what cats do. Yeah.
Did that survive into future editions of D&D, fourth or fifth?
I think it did. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Because it's just
that's you left your mark on the whole franchise, Jennifer.
Well, that and I know. We I went at Gen Con in 2000. Skip and I did a talk on the third edition Monster Manual, and so I decided to make that into a show and tell event. I bought a bunch of parts, stuffed animal parts, toys, and things like that. And so we in the audience made a monster during the talk, which was pretty cool. And I wound up standing the thing up afterwards and published it, online. So that was fun too.
That sounds fun. Like I'm picturing the templates that were in third edition being the parts, right? Like, let's attach werewolf, lycanthrope. Let's attach lycanthrope to this.
Yeah, that was a really good. That's a really good decision. That the templates really add a lot to things. And of course, I should say the other mark I guess that I'm proud of with third edition was that I proposed the book that eventually became Savage Species, monster characters for people to play, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Cool. That's fascinating. That's good. That's good. Mm-hmm. So, do you have anything you can remember? Any stories about working with Skip? I mean, did you work with him directly a lot, or was it just kind of toss things over the fence?
Well, he'd pass things down, but no, we did a lot of play tests with Skip, and like I said, the email exchange in which I suggested the pounce type attack to him. And Skip and I didn't get along so great at the first, but I sort of stood my ground, and he decided to try that. And then so we got along. After that, we actually got along quite well. We were good friends.
Respect. Yeah, that's Skip. Yeah, you got to earn his respect. Hey, Jennifer, it's any consolation, I had to go through the same thing. So did Jonathan Tweet. We all had to go through that.
It's like, all right, well.
Oh yeah, that's good. So it's funny. I can't help but tell you this story, Jennifer, because once in a while I take the opportunity to tell a story too. The guests are on. You're talking about the pounce. I got to tell my own cat story. I mean, when I was playing D&D, this is way before I got involved with Wizards, like back in college, right? And I think it's a Fiend Folio that came out, and there were stats for the alley cat, and my buddy had figured out that the alley cat could do more damage in a round than a two-handed sword. And because it had like claw, bite, and rape, or something like that. And so he rolls up this character and he asked me, can I have a couple of cats? And I'm like, okay, sure, you can have a couple of cats, right? So he shows up at the table ready to play. And I asked him what kind of weapon he's got. No, I don't have a weapon. I got two cats. I got an alley cat in each hand. So I'm going into combat with the alley cat. But it's part of the charm of D&D is people
do silly things,
crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. There's certainly some crazy stuff that happened with whips and chains, as I recall. That you could do that. The barbed chain or the spiked chain became a really overpowered weapon if you had the right feats and stuff. So that was interesting.
So what did you so after the monster manual, what did you work on after that?
Did a lot of the splat books.
Splat books.
Splat books, sorry, the character books like a sorcerer or whatever. The update, the things that added new abilities to the game. So the fighter book, whatever. I don't remember exactly which books I worked on anymore. It was quite a while ago, but I did a lot of them.
Oh my God, I have the same problem. I'm glad I'm not the one being interviewed. I'd be scared to death. Be like, are you going to ask me the name of somebody? Or
there's the complete X. We did a lot of the complete X's, and then late in third edition, we're doing some of the more interesting stuff, like the Book of Nine Swords. Was that third edition? Was that fourth edition? It's all running together. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yep, I worked on the Temple of Elemental Evil. That's true. I did work on that. That was pretty.
Okay.
That was.
Okay, that was it Monty or
Monty.
Bruce?
Yeah.
Monty Cook did the Temple.
Yeah.
Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah.
He was on. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he was Oh, and we're getting some assistance from chat. Derek says that the Book of Nine Swords was third edition. So
cool.
And that some of the things you worked on are some of his favorite third edition stuff. So
neat.
That's good.
Yeah, no, Book of Nine Swords was very different, very interesting. I really enjoyed working on that.
I don't remember it. Why don't you tell me about it?
It was a bunch of special moves and special paths that fighters could take. It was actually kind of, it's sort of what's the word I want? Foretold fourth edition to some extent. The kinds of special moves that the fighters could make was very much like the powers that came into fourth edition. It was just so different from everything else that had been in third edition before.
Mm-hmm.
It had a strong, it had a sort of a strong Asian combat theme to it, but it wasn't just that. It was a very good, cool book. That's what I remember. I did work on a number of Forgotten Realms books with Rich Baker as well. I remember that.
Yeah, Derek says lots of folks viewed it as a bit of an experimentation or trying out for fourth. I love the idea that it gave different, unique martial arts to different races. Somebody else asked if Joe Carricker worked on it. That name's not familiar to me.
The name is familiar, but I don't remember if he worked on it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Yeah. Well,
might have been developed. Maybe there was some development work by him.
Yeah. It's who knows. So did you get a chance to do any writing during this time for D&D at all? Was it always editing? I mean,
I did a little bit of writing.
Aside from the pounce rule, I mean, we got that.
I didn't write that.
We got that locked in.
Skip wrote that.
Oh no! The way my story is that you wrote it, you designed it, you play tested it.
Yeah, right.
You trademarked it. It's still yours.
I did a little bit of writing for Dungeon and stuff. I would occasionally do a little article, or once in a while I have done some adventures. I wrote quite a bit of stuff, obviously, for Savage Species, a lot of feats and monster types and things there.
So tell me a bit more about Savage Species.
The Savage Species was there was an internal call for proposals that Bill Slavicsek sent out. Now, want to look at some new ideas for D&D books, and so I said, well, here's an idea. Playable monster races for characters, kind of thing. New feats, new whatevers. And so that got chosen and eventually turned into Savage Species. So David Eckleberry did a lot of the heavy lifting on that. He came up with the CE system to sort of adjust how more powerful your character would be depending on what kind of creature you were playing. So the equivalent levels, EL, that's what it was.
Right.
Which was problematic sometimes, but it was an interesting idea to take on. I can play a dragon, but I can't start with you first levels because I'm just way bigger than you are. Right. Yeah, and he came up with templates for various monster races. And I like I said, did a lot of feats and more templates. Yeah.
And goblins, maybe they didn't.
Oh yeah, maybe some goblins, maybe. But goblins were already kind of player bases anyway. Didn't have to do much with them.
Right.
I had great plans. I was going to write a goblin, the complete goblin, a supplement of some kind, but that never actually happened.
I could just see the secret cabal with like
Yeah.
Bill Slavisek and Stark and
Yeah.
and me and Ryan Dancing, like Jennifer wants to write the complete goblin. We're all just shaking.
Yeah, no.
No, you better not let her do that.
Yeah. Mm.
So hey,
so I've done a little bit of writing over the years, not tons.
So I have a question for you. I've asked this a couple of times, and I keep re-asking it because I think there's more to I just feel like there's more to dig into it. How do you tell as an editor or publisher, an RPG publisher, how do you tell if an adventure is good? If it's a good adventure, like how do you evaluate? Somebody sends in an adventure, or somebody on staff writes an adventure module. It always mystified me. Like, how do we know these adventures are any good?
Well, frankly, I wasn't always sure they were either. I mean, when I look for an adventure, it's tricky editing an adventure. And usually what I would look for is, does it hang together? Are there obvious places where, what happens if they don't do what you want them to? Whether if there's too much leeway, you're going to know what's going to happen there. Or you've set up this map, but there's a problem with it. And just as how does it end? Is there like Deus Ex Machina ending? That's very bad. I think a good adventure is one that gives the characters lots of options to go off and do what they like, but still have some ways to direct them back to what it is they're supposed to be doing. And it's good if there's a couple of different ways to get them there, so they don't have to be railroaded into it. There should be some decent character interactions too. You could just go out and kill everything, but I don't think that's a very satisfying adventure.
Not anymore. It used to be. There was a time though, Jennifer.
Competitive D&D, it's all about competitive D&D. It's still all about the kill rate, the XP count, but it's not really what I think of as fun. Sometimes it's fun to go out and kill things, of course, but yeah, it shouldn't be all there is to it. Uh-oh, are you stuck again? Oh dear. Yes, Peter seems to be.
So I know we're going to get back to misbehaving. Am I back? Did you miss me? I'm so sorry.
I really thought my computer was kind of crap out on us.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I have a question. We'll get back to this chronology of wonderful projects you worked on, but I just have a personal question for you. Like when you play D&D, do you have a type? Do you like to play? Do you generally find yourself going to the same race class combo, or do you spread?
I do. Just why I tried to shake it up a bit later on. But I used to always end up playing these sneaky, thiefy types. We might as well have been goblins, except that they weren't. But so I wasn't big into the huge combat monster. I liked being the sneaky ones. I played that a lot. Didn't usually go for magic users either. I thought that was too complicated. But I've been shaking it up a lot more now. And when I had a favorite character that I was playing was a half-orc monk. This was in 4th edition, I think. Yeah, 4th edition, because you wouldn't have had one of those in 3rd, probably. Hey, he was a lot of fun. And very different from the kind of guy that I normally play.
The sneaky types. Okay, just a half step off of goblin. I got it.
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
Goblin. Yeah. If the light's just right, you can't really tell them apart. Yeah. Just.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on savage beasts or savage species. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where did you go? Where did we go from there? What else?
Well, I guess after that would be 4th edition, right? We got the playtest packet for 4th edition in whenever it was that 2007, I guess. And so I worked with my game group. We play tested the crap out of this thing for a year or so, along with lots of other groups, I'm sure. And working on fourth edition was a big challenge. It was we had to make decisions about style and stuff, and time. There was a bit of a time crunch on it, so it was. But we came up with it. It a very different game, and not everybody reacted to it well. But I thought it was. It had a lot of good things about it. I especially like the fourth edition DM's guide. I think that's still one of the best books that has ever been written about how to run a game. Yeah. And I did a lot of splat books for that too. The cleric book and the wizard book and adventurous and so forth for fourth edition.
Did you so mechanically, what did you like about it? Like what were some of your favorite improvements?
I know not everybody liked the whole powers thing, but I thought it was very good. It gave people more things that they could do. I mean, I guess some people would say that made everybody a wizard. I don't think that's fair, but having a selection of things that you could do as regular attacks or specials that had a cooldown, if you want to say that, a cooldown or a once per day use. I thought that really added a lot to it, and the different paths, the different styles of play for a particular class. I like that a lot too.
Cool. By the way, you got a Skybosia, but I always wonder if I'm slaughtering the names people come up with in chat. Says, I just want to say thank you to Jennifer Clarke Wilkes for being a strong woman working in the fantasy genre. You are an inspiration. So.
Aww.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree. Yeah. So good on you. If you're still with us, Skybosia, I hope I'm saying your name right. Got a question for Jennifer? Just type it in there, and you'd be delighted to take. She likes really challenging questions.
Oh, Skybosia, there you are. Take care, like a contribution, savage species. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and introduction to the monster races to the players. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Nice.
Okay, so you worked on so you edit the okay, hey, I gotta ask you a real quick question too, because I'm not looking up things on Wikipedia while we're typing. You said that the fourth edition DMG had great advice. Now I'm just suddenly curious who wrote it. You remember?
I don't remember. I guess I'd want.
Oh, somebody will look it up. Here we go. Now
Here we go.
Question. Did you have any favorite monsters you worked on?
My favorite monster that I worked on.
Second favorite. We know the first was goblin.
Yeah.
So.
Boy. I'm not thinking about that one. It's, I mean, there was no particular monster that I really worked on. I didn't work on a book of this here monster.
You just worked on the whole book.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of interesting dragon breath feats for savage species. So I guess. Right. That counts. Dragons are cool.
Yeah. Dragons are cool. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Dragons.
Hey, Frequent Beef.
Cool.
I know who Frequent Beef is.
Frequent Beef. Oh, that's Derek.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Hey, Derek.
Yeah. Since dragons came up, I short little story about that. I once ran a campaign. In fact, it was third edition playtesting. It was at the WotC offices because Steve Connor was in it, and Mike Boozer, and couple. I don't remember who all else. CJ, the late great CJ. We all miss. The premise of the first level characters, they roll their first level characters, and I said, well, don't worry about where you're from and how blah 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 blah. The beginning was a fledgling dragon who'd been left with a tiny bit of treasure to fend for herself. Mom had left, and this little dragon got a deck of many things to draw from, and drew the card that summons 4 deaths to kill you.
Gosh.
But if you're a dragon, what are deaths? They're player characters, right?
Oh, geez.
So the beginning of the campaign was all the players were
deaths.
Suddenly appeared in front of this young dragon or fledgling dragon and felt compelled to kill it. And,
Well,
here we go. The DMG one, maybe there was two versions for
James Wyatt.
James Wyatt.
Oh yes.
With Rob.
Right.
Yeah, that's and then Bill
DMG
Slavic,
too.
Mike Merles, and Rob. Well, that's a star-studded lineup right there. No wonder.
Yeah. Huh? Yep.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so what where did you go from there after on fourth edition? Did you add a
I know
team
I spent a long time selling fourth edition. I went to a lot of cons and ran it for people there. And then around the end of 2012, I moved over to Magic again for a while. I was working mostly on, well, Magic creative teams. So I was doing flavor text, card names, and writing fiction for the website and backstory stuff, world building, very interesting stuff. And I did that for a couple of years, and then back to D&D again for fifth edition. It was kind of coming. It was getting close to publication date on fifth edition. So I was doing some final work on the player's handbook at that time.
So you were still at WotC when they were working on fifth, or was this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was still at WotC when they worked on fifth. I left before it was published, but just before.
Right.
Yeah.
So, by the way, before we leave fourth edition, I'm sure Derek is just laughing inside because I'm always somewhat critical of fourth edition in just sort of a fun, loving way because, I worked on third edition. So, I feel like there's this one topic where I can afford to just be kind of pedantic about the whole thing,
So I actually think fifth edition is probably to me, fifth edition, I think, is the best. Because it synthesizes the best things of the editions that came to fourth, the best things from fourth, best things from third. It's more approachable. It's got a lot of options for people, and lots of. It's still got the way the guidance for the DM. That was one of the best things out of fourth. So, I really think fifth edition is a great success.
Yeah, I like it. It got me back. Like I did. I was fourth edition was just too jarring for me. Like
it was very very different game.
The design was great. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Heinzu and everybody did a good job on the design. But fifth edition got me back to playing, canon D&D, and it's I've been running fifth edition, and of course it's just so amazing how popular it's becoming mainstream, with streaming and with Hollywood.
It's really something.
How do you feel about that?
About D&D being popular? Well, I was cool before it was, but no, I think it's good. I mean, I like to live through the whole satanic panic garbage, and people thinking that my sister would think that when we played D&D, for some reason we put on costumes and ran around the house. She had no idea that we just sat at a table and drank beers or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, 12-year-olds drinking beer, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah, wait, I was not a 12-year-old. Because so now people sort of understand that D&D is just some dorky people sitting around a table. That's a good thing. Although there's still this weird meme about dungeon masters wearing funny hats. What's that about? It's just.
But now I find it charming. For years it was like, back in 1978, the term dungeon master was just so corny.
Very creepy. Very creepy.
I think a lot of us just like had bad memories of the word term dungeon master, and we adopted game master very quickly. Now though, Jennifer, I've gone back to starting to call myself a dungeon master because now I think it's kind of cool to be a dungeon master.
Dungeon master, yeah.
I mean, it was cool back in the 70s too. It's just only a tiny number of us people knew that. Right.
Well, I have occasionally DM'd. It's not what I consider a strength, although people seem to think I run a pretty good game when I do.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
But it's challenging. Being a good DM, you have to juggle a lot of things. My husband is a really good DM. I learned from him a lot. But DMing, I have to admit the name was pretty creepy. Always has been, but I said there's this cachet now. But where the idea of the hat came from, I don't know.
It's a wizard, you know.
He's a wizard. You got to wear a hat. I guess it's just that little dungeon master character from the cartoon. Maybe I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm really happy that D&D's become so popular. I just think it's fantastic that this thing that we always knew was cool, but everybody else thought was weird.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, it's geeky, but it's gone from nerdy to geeky, if that makes any sense. Like, okay.
Yeah, geeky
like,
is cool. It's not like weirdos in the basement. No, anybody can play D&D now. And there's all these online role-playing games that are really just first-person shooters, but they still have this fantasy aspect to. They still owe a lot to D&D. So you're playing World of Warcraft or whatever, you're playing D&D, and that's pretty darn cool. Yeah.
So I like Derek's comment. I still think my favorite is a silly name Nobilis used for the GM, the Hollyhock God.
The Hollyhock God? That's very silly. Yes.
Now, Noble. Okay, we're getting way off topic. Nobilis
wow.
is a game I've always wanted to play, never got a chance. I really, yeah. Careful, Derek. You're gonna end up having to run Nobilis for me.
It's a beautiful book.
It's a gorgeous book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so what'd you work on 5th edition then? Was it the core book?
Pardon? I mostly came in near the end of the player's handbook editing cycle. Did some work on that. So I wasn't terribly involved in the process, but I was still, play testing and so forth. And yeah, so I had my hands in it, but not very much. Kind of like I had a little dip my toes into 2nd edition, a little bit of contact with 5th edition.
Right.
And since then, now I'm doing freelance editing on other games, but they still owe a lot to D&D.
So what have you worked on since leaving WotC?
Well, in terms of role play, I've done a lot of work with Rob Schwab on his Shadow of the Demon Lord system. So I worked on the core rule book for that, and lots of supplemental material too. So I'm still doing quite a bit of those. Did some work for Green Ronin.
So what is that? I'm vaguely familiar with that he has this system, but I don't know much about it other than the title says Demon Lord, which sounds pretty cool, but I don't know.
I mean, it's dark. It's really dark, but it's basically a D20 game. It's a simple D20 game. It's got interesting innovations in it, like the Boon and Bane dice that you can use to make a challenge a bit tougher or a bit easier depending on circumstances. And it's got it's just generally a D20 game though. It's very easy to pick up. It's a lot of it is mood. There's a lot of world building and general feeling of doom that goes with it. He did a version of it called he did a one-off Mad Max type version of it, which I think ultimately he developed into Punk Apocalyptic, but he's working on something now, his Shadow of the Mad Wizard, which is much the same system, but a little bit less over the top for a broader audience. I've done a lot of stuff with Green Ronin over the years. In fact, I was involved with the startup of Green Ronin back in the day.
Oh, right. Really?
Right,
I had Chris Prentice on our show, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Prentice. Chris Pramus. Excuse me.
Pramus.
There was a Wizards investor named Chris Prentice. So anyway.
Yeah. Back when he and I were still working together on D&D, I did something called Sword and Fist, which was a sort of an online PDF thing that was actually published on the D&D website. And then from there, he started up Green Ronin, and I worked on quite a few of the early books for that. Last thing I worked on for Green Ronin though was Orc the role-playing game, 2nd edition, and it's a very silly system, but it's actually a lot of fun. You play orcs. It's a lot like goblins, only stupider and stronger.
Stupider and stronger. Yeah. I didn't realize that orcs were as smart as goblins. Now I know.
They're not.
No,
they're not.
No.
Nope, me am orc. Yeah.
Okay. They're a lot more serious, aren't they?
No, well, not an orc the role-playing game. They aren't. They're me, I'm orc now. Me, I'm kill you. They are very reckless with their lives, much like goblins.
Right.
And the other stuff I've been doing, occasional, like I said, I worked on the Betrayal Legacy game. This was a couple of years ago, and that was working with our
Mike Selinker?
no. The original oh
Matt,
well. No,
Matt Lee, did Matt Leacock do it? I don't know. Yeah,
I'm sorry, and I've lost his name.
Yeah.
He was from Hasbro. Sorry about that. Anyway, so this is a legacy game. So the designer this is the designer of the legacy style game. So it's Betrayal, but you're building the house over time. There's this backstory, lots of side treks, very, very complicated editing job. We got it done, and it's a really cool game, and I'm very proud of that one.
Did they I always I played Betrayal, the old one, the original one, a handful of times, and it always seemed a little confusing. Like it always was this moment of like, how is this supposed to work?
Which is basically you have to go with the you just say, well, let's explore this house and see what happens. If you you just accept that and then go from there.
But I imagine the mechanics got tightened up with
a little bit, yeah. But it's still recognizably the same game. With the betrayal thing adds some new rules. Like I said, you're adding stickers to the board and putting new cards in and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, I think legacy games, I think, seem like they could just be a huge challenge to design, to develop, to play test, to edit, to publish. I mean, like it seems like every aspect of every part of the process of making a legacy game,
it's it
seems like
super complicated. And especially with this one, it's not just all the things that change the rules, but also you've got 3 books that all interact with each other. You've got special decks that you have to draw from, and in the right order. Keeping all those moving parts together was phenomenal, frankly. And they had a bunch of different playtest groups all churning through it, and wow, it was something I've never done anything like that before.
I had I did through a whole legacy campaign of Charterstone by Jamie Stegmaier.
Oh yeah.
Which I loved. I thought was great. But now you can play on Steam. It's way easier because you can just reset it and do as many times as you want to, and just do it by yourself or with your wife, whatever. The I think Jamie said after he did that game, I saw one post. He said, "I'm never doing a legacy game again."
Yeah. Let's see. I've done a little bit of work with video games as well. So I worked with worked on a game called Anyway, it was a zombie game, and I was doing a lot of editing and writing of the character text. I'm sorry, I've got old person memory, and I can't remember the names of anybody or anything right now.
Oh, don't worry.
This was
same thing. It's like I can't remember. That's why I waited until now to do this series, because now we can just make up whatever we want, and we just blame it on bad memories. Also, hey,
Fireside Studios.
We have another question from Symposia. Do you guys have any hopes for the future direction of D&D? Wishes for the next edition?
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a next edition. 5th edition is continuing to grow and develop and add new things and take into account shortcomings of previous versions of the game and correct them. I'm not eager for a new edition anytime soon. I think they're doing good things with the Adventurers League and with the online supplements. I'm not really sure what I would want in a new game version of the game. Maybe something that's more interactive. So a rule book that's also got links or whatever that works with an online gameplay engine. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy with 5th.
Yeah, I think traditionally, looking back, since the 70s, the whole history of Dungeons and Dragons, the sales profile is when there's a new edition, it goes, sales go up and then they start going down, and then there's a new edition, it goes up and then goes down. And so there's an economic incentive. There has been traditionally an economic incentive to do a new edition to keep the brand strong and going. And I think also opportunities to improve the game legitimately that justified it. So my hope for a new edition is similar to yours, Jennifer, is that there isn't a new edition, but I also recognize how challenging that could be to WotC. So my hope is that they have a model that they may already have this, and I just don't know the inner workings, but that Dungeons and Dragons is in a place, or will get to a place, where it is financially rewarding for Wizards without the temptation to do a new edition, which can be so disruptive. And given how much bigger D&D is now, in early years, people were generally clamoring for new editions because there were so many opportunities to make the game, to improve the game. Now, I think it would be very disruptive for there to be a new edition.
Yeah. I think so. I think new editions are not as important now because you can make adjustments in real time, with online. You don't have to publish everything new again, just sort of maintain what's there. And I think,
well, for us, right? But I hope, I still have that publisher sympathy, which is that I hope that the brand is doing well enough for Wizards that they're not tempted to do anything like that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, that name of the game was State of Decay. Plug. State of Decay is the zombie game I worked on. Yeah.
Is it Sting or Stink?
State of Decay.
Neither.
State. Yes. Yeah, and
well, Scott Bozzi has mentioned to like to see a better, would like to see a digital platform, and that's I think that's what you were saying too, Jennifer. I agree. It would be great if the to see an evolution of the electronic tools that allow us to get together. It's already so much better than it used to be. To be able to play on Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or D&D Beyond and Zoom and all these tools and ways that you can get in and do stuff. And there's an opportunity for that to just get really slick, really good. So hopefully that's what Wizards will. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. I want to, is there anything you want to say about what you're doing now? And then I'm going to leave you with I have one question I'm saving till the end.
At the moment, I'm pretty quiet here. I do still do some work for Rob on Shadow of the Demon Lord, but it's been just piecework here and there. So mostly I just got a day job. I work supporting a virtual reality system, and it's interesting. And that's about it. Otherwise, I'm just kind of sitting and writing out the COVID here in Hope, BC.
Well, we're still young, Jennifer. We still have many great projects out in front of us, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
I'm sure. Okay, so my parting question that I like to ask all of our guests is like, when we look back on having a long career, really, with Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast and working on Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, especially. The two best games ever invented. What do you when you think back? What do you treasure from that time? What have you taken with you from those days, from that experience?
Wow. Mostly I just got a warm, fuzzy glow from knowing that I created things for these games and that those things are out there in the wild. And, I'm part of that long history of these amazing games. Even if it's just a small part. The editors, with an editor, usually you only notice them when they mess up. So I'm glad to have made sure that I was invisible most of the time.
That's great. I think it's a great answer. Editors and business executives are kind of we can compare those two sometimes. Yes. Like Jennifer. Oh well, I just want to thank you, Jennifer. It's great to have you on the show. Like I said when we were in our prep discussion before we started the show. The main reason I like to do this show is just a chance to corner somebody I worked with and make them talk to me for an hour. And it's a lot of fun.
Well, this was good. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of Fireside with Peter Adkison. Our guests next week will be Mary Kirchhoff and James Lauder. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. We're gonna have two guests at once.
Wow.
In the meantime, there's plenty of cool stuff to watch on Gen Con TV. Friday at 2 p.m. is Table Takes. 2 p.m. Pacific. At 3:30 Pacific, we have the Gen Con Roundtable. And very important, at 5 p.m. Pacific, we will have the Gen Con Online Q&A. So as we're gearing up for Gen Con Online, we are also trying to get the information out there about how you can register events, sign up for events, participate, and I hope you will do that. Next week on Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, we have Board Games with Brothers Murph. And then on Wednesday, a week from today, at 11 a.m., we have Board Games with This Game Gets Dicey. And then at 4 p.m. Pacific, back here with me, Fireside, again with Mary Kirchhoff and James Lauder. By the way, most of the Magic the Gathering episodes that we did at Fireside are now available in podcast form. And so check those out. And please remember to subscribe to Fireside, turn on your notifications. If you miss a show, you can find all of our shows on the Gen Con Video YouTube channel, typically just within 1 day later. So there's that. Thanks again to our guest, Jennifer Clarke Wilkes, our studio manager, Marcus Mays, our streaming manager, Lauren Bond, our producer, Derek Guter, to Gen Con TV for hosting us, and especially thank you for watching.